Well, by now I'm sure you've all heard of Holley's new Sniper EFI system. Today we brought the 67 Camaro in to show you just how easy it is to install. But first, let's go take a look at what comes in the kit. Here's what you'll get when your new Sniper EFI kit arrives. The first thing you'll find is a startup guide and detailed instructions, walking you step by step through the installation process. The Sniper throttle body. It's a 4-injector unit capable of supporting up to 650 horsepower. It has a built-in ECU, so there's no external boxes to mount. There's also a serviceable throttle position sensor and idle air control motor to simplify the installation. The throttle body also houses a fuel pressure regulator that's preset to 58.5 psi. There's a 3.5-inch touchscreen color LCD. This makes it easy to navigate the startup wizard and monitor engine sensors. The wideband O2 sensor allows the system to learn as you drive. The main power harness, which contains the 4 wires that you'll need to connect to power up your new Sniper EFI system, as well as the fuel pump wire that's powered by our 40-amp relay. An auxiliary wiring harness. You use this when you're controlling electric fans or nitrous relays. It's also used when you're connecting the coil driver. Throttle and transmission brackets with mounting hardware. There's a base gasket with mounting studs and nuts, as well as an air cleaner stud with base gasket and miscellaneous throttle and transmission linkage studs. The coolant temp sensor, which provides the ECU with vital information on your engine's operating temperature. A stainless steel, no-weld O2 bung with high temp gasket and quality clamps to keep it in place. Plenty of split loom to protect your wiring. There's even some zip ties and miscellaneous wire terminals to help to complete the wiring installation. Now that we know everything that's included in our kit, we can go ahead and begin our installation. Remember, safety first. Whenever you're doing any work on your fuel or electrical system, it's always best to remove the negative battery terminal before proceeding. Now we can start removing the carburetor. It's always a good idea to go ahead and label all the vacuum lines before you get too far. On this application, we're just going to use the PCV valve and the vacuum advance for the distributor. Go ahead and mark them now. Next, you can go ahead and remove the throttle linkage, as well as the return spring, and put them out of the way for safekeeping. You also need to go ahead and disconnect your fuel line. Be sure and use a rag to catch any of the excess fuel before you remove it. I went ahead and removed all 4 nuts from the carburetor studs. Now we're ready to pull it off. Be careful when you're lifting it off that you don't spill any fuel. I removed the old carburetor and the spacer. Now you can install the new gasket supplied in the kit. And now we're ready to install the throttle body. Make sure you don't pinch any wires when you've installed on the intake. Now you can fasten the throttle body to your intake. Use the studs, washers, and nuts found in your kit. I went ahead and drained some of the coolant so I can replace the coolant temp sensor, or CTS, with the one provided in the kit. This sensor lets the ECU know when the engine has reached an operating temperature of at least 160 degrees Fahrenheit, triggering learn mode. There are various locations that you can install your temp sensor, depending on the make and model of your engine. On this small block Chevy, I decided to go to the passenger side cylinder head to install ours. The sensor comes with sealant already pre-applied, but since the OEM sensor was larger in diameter than our replacement one, I'll have to use this bushing and some PTFE paste to seal it up. Now that the CTS is installed, we can go ahead and work on our throttle linkage. Every scenario is different. That's why the Sniper kit includes a variety of mounting studs. Check out our how-to videos at the Holley Performance YouTube channel for more tips and tricks on connecting your throttle linkages. Don't forget to reconnect your vacuum lines and your throttle return spring when you're finished. Next, we'll install the oxygen sensor. It should be mounted as close to the engine as possible, but after all the cylinders have merged. This holds true whether you're using a manifold or a header for your installation. If you're using a long tube header, it should be mounted at least 1 to 10 inches after the collector flange. Make sure you have at least 18 inches of exhaust after the O2 sensor. In this case, we have a full exhaust, so we don't have to worry about it. Our Sniper kit included this handy stainless steel clamp-on style O2 bung. It also includes a high temp gasket and quality clamps to seal it all up. First, we'll need to find a suitable location to mount the O2 sensor. Be sure to mount your O2 sensor in a position that's at least 10 degrees upward from horizontal. This prevents condensation from collecting on the tip of the sensor, which can shock and damage your O2 sensor on startup. Once you found your location, you can take a marker and outline the hole. Next, you have to take a punch to get a start for drilling. You can use a 3/4 inch drill bit or a step bit to help enlarge the pilot hole. Go ahead and position the gasket and the stainless steel bung. Just lightly tighten them down. Install the wideband O2 sensor that's included in your kit. Make sure the O2 sensor doesn't interfere with the drive line. If everything looks good, you can go ahead and tighten everything down. Connect the O2 sensor to the throttle body and secure the wires to prevent contact with moving parts and high heat areas. Now that we've got the oxygen sensor installed, I'd like to show you just how simple it is to wire Sniper EFI. There's only 4 connections you'll have to make: battery positive, battery negative, a switch 12-volt ignition source, and your coil input. One of the most common mistakes we find is the fact that people don't read the instructions closely. The power wire and the negative wire that are found in the wiring harness need to be connected directly to your positive and negative terminals on the battery, never to a junction box, cutoff switch, or fuse panel. You'll need to take some time and plan out the routing for your wiring harness. Make sure to avoid high heat areas like the exhaust and ensure that you have plenty of wire link to make your connections. The first thing you'll need to do is connect the main wiring harness to the corresponding connector that comes from the throttle body. On this car, we wanted to retain the stock factory battery cable terminals to keep a stock look. So I purchased a dual terminal style battery, which will allow me to use the OEM terminals on top, but gives me a dedicated connection on the side post for the power and ground from the Sniper wiring harness. Strip the wire and install one of the supplied terminals using the proper crimp tool. Use a heat gun to shrink the protective coating that's found on the terminals. Do this to both the red and black wires. Go ahead and connect your positive power wire directly to the battery, but don't connect the negative yet. Next, you'll have to find a dedicated 12-volt ignition source to connect the pink wire to. I'll show you how to do this now. I found a clean switched ignition source right here on the factory fuse panel. Check this by connecting a test light and cycling the ignition switch between the run and off positions. It's a good idea to go ahead and go a step further and verify that you have 12 volts during the cranking process. Do this using a multimeter by setting it to the DC voltage mode. Connect the leads and check the voltage in the run position. It should read somewhere near 12 volts. Now check the voltage again while cranking the engine. There should be around 9 to 10 volts while cranking due to the extra load from the starter. I have just over 10 volts, so this should be a good location to connect my pink wire. While I'm down here under the dash, I'm going to go ahead and run the CAN bus cable from our 3.5-inch touchscreen through the firewall and into the engine bay so that we can make the connection to the lead coming from the throttle body. Be sure and use rubber grommets to protect any wires from damage. The blue wire is for your fuel pump. It has a built-in 40-amp relay to directly power the pump. Go ahead and run this back to the fuel pump now, being sure to avoid heat and sharp edges. Once you've finished routing your wires and making the proper connections, be sure to go back and secure them properly with either zip ties or insulated clamps. If you're running a stock mechanical advanced distributor with inductive ignition coil, simply connect the yellow coil input lead from the Sniper to the negative terminal on your coil. If you're running a large cap HEI style distributor, the yellow coil input wire needs to be connected to the TAC terminal found on the side of your distributor cap. For this build, we decided to go ahead and upgrade our ignition system to Holley's dual sync distributor. The Holley distributor connects to our wiring harness using the optional adapter, part number 558-493. Since we'd also like to control ignition timing, we'll go ahead and wire in the included coil driver module. For detailed instructions on installing Holley's dual sync distributor, check out our how-to video. Now that we got the Sniper throttle body installed, made all the proper wiring connections, and installed the O2 sensor, we can focus our time on the fuel system. There's a lot of different options when it comes to plumbing your vehicle for Sniper EFI, but Holley's made it easy with our Master Kits. The Master Kit includes a fuel pump, pre and post fuel filters, 20 feet of vapor guard hose with fittings, and it even has a block-off plate for your mechanical fuel pump. The 67 Camaro has plenty of space between the fuel tank and the rear differential. In your case, it may not be as much. I was able to make a bracket that I hung from both the tank straps that I can mount both the fuel pump and the pre and post filters from. Next, you'll need to connect the fuel tank outlet to the inlet on the pre-filter using a piece of vapor guard hose. You'll also need to connect the post filter outlet to the supply line running to the engine bay. Make sure when you're running your return line and your supply line that you protect the hose from any high heat or sharp edges along the way. If there's not enough space between your tank and differential, another possible location for the fuel pump is right here on your frame rail. Just remember, the pump should be mounted lower than and as close as possible to the fuel tank for the best performance and service life. Our Holley inline pumps, like this 12-600 unit, fit nicely and provide a clean look. Another great alternative is to replace your fuel tank with one of our new Sniper EFI conversion tanks. The tanks come complete with a pair of tank straps, fuel level sending unit, fuel level float, mounting gaskets and hardware for the pump and sending unit, complete detailed instructions, the fuel pump module hanger, an in-tank fuel pump, filter sock, a rollover valve, and clamp and zip ties to mount the pump. If you have a custom fuel tank or there isn't a replacement option available for your particular vehicle, Holley's new drop-in module is an excellent way to add an in-tank fuel pump to your existing fuel system. You'll need to run a return line from the Sniper throttle body in the engine bay back to your fuel tank to return the fuel. There's multiple locations where you can install this bulkhead. I'll show you some options here. The first option is obviously install it directly into your fuel tank. Now to do this, you'll have to remove the fuel tank from the vehicle itself, and then you'll have to have a professional fully clean it. That way there's no explosion hazard. The second option is to actually install it into the fuel sending unit. Most of these are removable and have plenty of room. Just make sure you don't obstruct anything on the back side and that you have plenty of room to tighten the nuts. The third option is to actually install it into the fuel filler neck itself. Most of them are removable, therefore there's no explosion hazard. Plus you can keep all the shavings from entering the fuel tank itself. Just simply drill a hole, making sure that you can get to it with the back side with a wrench, and install it in the fuel filler neck itself. It's that easy. If you don't have the room, or you simply don't want to run a return line all the way from the engine bay back to your fuel tank, well, Holley has a solution for you. It's our filter regulator. It can shorten your return line dramatically. It has a replaceable filter element and a built-in fuel pressure regulator that's preset to 58.5 psi. This is what a typical installation using our Holley filter regulator will look like. Notice there's only a single supply line and the shortened return line. This eliminates the need for a regulator in the engine bay, plus there's one less filter to purchase and mount. If you're using one of the Holley filter regulators in your setup, you can install a cap on the fitting at the fuel pressure regulator on the throttle body. Next, we need to supply power to our fuel pump. Connect the blue fuel pump wire that comes from the Sniper wiring harness directly to the positive side of your fuel pump. You'll also need to make a connection from the negative side of the fuel pump, either directly to the battery negative terminal or a good clean chassis ground. Now we can work on the fuel connections to our Sniper throttle body here in the engine bay. We'll need to run a supply and a return line from our fuel tank in the back of the car to our Sniper throttle body here in the engine bay. We recommend that you use a fuel line with at least a 3/8 inch ID for the supply line and 5/16 ID for the return. There are 3 inlet options on the Sniper throttle body that you could connect your supply lines to, but it's important that the return line is only connected to the -6 fitting found on the fuel pressure regulator. Before we can connect our supply line to the throttle body, you'll need to flush the system. I find it easiest if you leave yourself a little extra hose and run it directly into a gasoline suitable container. Flushing the supply line prevents debris from clogging the injectors, causing poor starts, rough idle, poor performance, and even injector failure. We'll come back prior to startup and finish our connection at the throttle body. First, let's reconnect both negative leads to our battery. Then I'll walk you step by step through the startup wizard. You'll need to turn your ignition system to the run position, but don't crank the engine yet. On the Sniper home screen, go ahead and select the wizard's icon. Next, you'll need to select the part number of the Sniper throttle body you're using. The wizard's going to ask how many cylinders your engine is. We're running a V8. Go ahead and select the engine displacement by sliding the cursor and then click Next. Now the wizard would like to know the target idle speed. We're running a 4-speed, so we're going to go ahead and select 750 RPMs for our target. The wizard would also like to know what style cam we're running, whether it's a stock, street strip, or a race style. We have a stock cam. Sniper is capable of controlling nitrous. We don't have nitrous on this engine, so we'll select the none option. Now the wizard would like to know what type of ignition system we're running. If you're running an HEI or a stock ignition system with inductive coils, you'll need to select the coil negative option. Timing control is not available with this option. If your ignition system includes a CD box, such as the MSD or Excel box, you'll need to select the CD box option. Sniper EFI is capable of controlling timing when you're running a magnetic style pickup distributor such as the MSD unit, or if you're running a Hall effect distributor such as the Holley Dual Sync. The steps for both the magnetic and dual sync option are the same. I'll walk you through those now. The first thing it's going to ask is whether or not you're going to control timing. In this scenario, yes, we are controlling timing. Now it wants to know what you want the ignition timing to be at wide open throttle. We'll be conservative and select 32. Click Next. Go ahead and click the Start icon, and the wizard will begin installing a calibration based on the information you just provided. When prompted, turn the key off and then back to the run position to complete the calibration install. When you turn the key back to the run position, you should hear the fuel pump come on for approximately 5 seconds. Remember that we have our supply line run into a gas can, so go ahead and cycle the key another 2 to 3 times to completely flush the line. Now we can remove the excess hose from the gas can and go ahead and cut it to length. Now that we've got the fuel system completely flushed, we can go ahead and complete our connection to the throttle body. Use the fitting supplied and install it on the hose. Tighten your clamp and make the connection at the throttle body. Don't forget to tighten your fitting when you're done. Now we'll need to perform the sensor verification on the handheld. Before you start the engine, you'll need to verify that all the sensors are operating properly. To do this, turn the key to the run position and listen for the fuel pump. From the home screen, select the monitor, then the monitor's icon. Now you'll need to select initial startup. This will bring up a screen showing all the sensor readings. Engine RPM should be at stall since we're not running. Throttle position sensor should be at 0. If you slowly depress the throttle to wide open throttle, you should get a reading between 85 and 100%. If your reading is lower than 85%, you'll need to correct any issue preventing the full travel of your throttle linkage before proceeding. Your map sensor should read between 95 and 102 kPa. Higher elevations can cause the reading to be as low as 75 kPa. The coolant temp sensor should read the ambient temperature of the air around your engine. Ours is 81 to 82 degrees. The IAC, we will have to address this after the engine is warmed up. If any of the sensors are not reading correctly, you must resolve the issue before the engine is started. While you still have your handheld on the initial startup screen, go ahead and crank the engine, but watch the RPMs. It should say syncing, and the engine should start up. If there's no RPM signal, you either have an error in the wiring or the system setup. If the engine starts but is idling too low, it may be necessary to open the idle speed screw slightly until it idles on its own. Go ahead and let the engine run until it reaches a normal operating temperature above 160 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a good time to double check for any coolant or fuel leaks now. If you are controlling timing with your Sniper, you will need to do a static timing check using the touchscreen and a timing light. First, we'll need to lock the static timing. Do this by selecting the tuning icon on your home screen. Select System, then Static Timing. Now slide the cursor to 15 degrees and click Set. Verify that you have 15 degrees of timing before top dead center at your harmonic balancer with a timing light. If the balancer does not read 15 degrees before top dead center, it may be necessary to loosen the distributor and adjust it accordingly. Don't forget to retighten it when you're done. Once you have verified that you have 15 degrees of timing, go ahead and click Clear on the handheld. This completes the static timing verification process, and Sniper ECU is now controlling the timing. Once your engine has reached an operating temperature of at least 160 degrees, we can go ahead and set the idle speed to the RPM that we selected in the Startup Wizard. To do this, you'll need to select the Monitor, Multi-Gauge, then Sensors icon from the home screen. With your vehicle in neutral and the parking brake applied, adjust the idle screw, close or open until the IDAC reads between 2 and 10%. If your TPS reading goes above 0%, once this procedure is done, you'll need to cycle the ignition switch off and then back on to reset the TPS to 0. Since the Sniper EFI is the same height as the carburetor that we already removed, there shouldn't be any hood clearance issues. In fact, in most cases you can actually reuse the factory air cleaner. With Sniper EFI, we were able to keep the old school look, but now have all the benefits of EFI hidden right under our air cleaner. Congratulations, you've just installed your new Sniper EFI system. All that's left to do now is simply take the vehicle for a drive and let Sniper self-tune. Refer to our quick start guide and follow the instructions under the first drive section to perform the initial self-tuning operation. It's always best to perform the initial drive in an area that doesn't have much traffic. That way you can vary the engine load accordingly. It's also a good idea to have a buddy along so he can monitor the gauges while you focus on the driving.